Mics, make them green.
Make them green.
Give me the, tell me when. Good? Good evening. It is now 7 o'clock, March 10th, 2025, in the Genoa Township Hall. This is the Genoa Township Zoning Commission. On the agenda this evening, zoning case 2024-05, zoning resolution amendment, fourth meeting. Staff present this evening, Joe Schaefer, the Director of Development and Zoning, and Rafiq Udin, Deputy Zoning Director. Welcome, Rafiq. First meeting with us. Call to roll call.
Roll call, Mr. Bernert. Present. Mr. James. Here. Mr. Leff.
Here.
Mr. Tysman.
Present.
Mr. Wester.
Here.
Mr. Welch was unable to attend this evening, and Mr. Graver also was not able to attend this evening. Pardon me.
Statement of policy, this meeting may be recorded. Such recordings are public record, may be posted online. It could be subject to review in court, as is the adopted policy of the zoning commission. All applicants will be granted an opportunity to make their formal presentation. The audience may be then granted an opportunity to comment, followed by the applicant's response and questions from the commission. The chairperson may limit repetitive debate and reserves the following rights: to limit comment to items on the agenda, to limit public comment to 5 minutes per person, to restrict the number of times a member of public is permitted to speak, and to enact any other reasonable ad hoc protocols or measures necessary to maintain a fair, safe, and orderly meeting. This policy was adopted by the commission to provide for the respectful, constructive, and efficient discussion of business scheduled for consideration and to allow for proper due process as required by law. Before we get to the minutes, I do want to thank Mr. Welch for the number of years of service. Tonight was going to be his last meeting. He will no longer be with the commission, so thank you, Mr. Welch, for the years, and hopefully see you around. With that, minutes, do I have a motion? Yeah, I know, I need a new motion person now.
I move to approve the February 10, 2025 meeting minutes as presented or as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion?
No.
Roll.
Roll call, Mr. Bernert. Yes. Mr. James.
Aye.
Mr. Tysman.
Am I allowed to approve that when I was absent?
Did you watch the recording?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Yes.
Sure.
Yes. Motion passes. The time is now 7:02 p.m. and I call zoning case 2024-05 to order. The legal notice was read at the previous meeting, and we're going to, for those speaking, please stand and be sworn in for this evening. Raise your right hand. Are you speaking, Rick, or not? Yep. Raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes. Be seated. Mr. Schaefer, anything to report?
No, I don't, Mr. Chairman. I think we're just continuing the discussions we've had at the prior meeting, so.
Okay. First up tonight on the zoning resolution is public comment. Anybody willing to speak? Do you have this?
He's got it. Thank you.
Rick Whelan, 9500 Britton Woods Drive, Kalina. A couple notes here. I've been trying to follow a little bit on some of the meetings on a YouTube video, and it's kind of hard to hear you guys on a lot of the stuff. So if I could ask, maybe speak more closer to the microphones and stuff. We can hear a few of them, hear Joe fine, that type of stuff, but it's hard to hear a lot of the other guys sometimes on the stuff. So I want to bring something up on that section 8 or whatever. I brought that to your attention before as far as some of the questions on that. And I did a little paper here based on some stuff. I think we have some problems with our zoning here as far as the calculations on our lot sizes and stuff when we're using this percentage of building coverage and impervious surfaces. So the top example on the left is just an SR 30,000 square foot lot. And right now we've got 20% building coverage and 35% is what it fell into, since there, I don't know if you guys are making any changes to it or not, but that's what it was currently, so. So when you use those numbers and pan them out, those are the square footages that you're allowed to cover. 6,000 square feet with a building and 10,500 with impervious surfaces. But when you move up in SR, and there's a lot right now that's zoned SR over on Maxtown Road, a guy wants to build a house on it. I used his for an example. It's 1.87 acres. So when you run the numbers on his stuff based off of those current things, he's allowed to put in 16,291 square feet of buildings on that property. And when you go to the upper corner on the right, you see what rural residential does on a lot my size with a 10% building coverage. I'm allowed to put 9,565 square feet of building on there. So something's wrong in our calculations on how we're doing this stuff. So when you run the numbers down through some other ones, I did down at the bottom, I put some extra stuff in there on the SR stuff as far as even calculating it to 10% numbers instead of the 20% numbers. And it comes out a lot closer. Those are better numbers concerned than what they are now. So I think we need to go back and look at what's going on in that SR district. That's why I also made you guys out some information before on some of the accessory building sizes. I think you have some of those pamphlets before. Franklin County has a site like, or a chart like this that they use as far as breaking it down for lot sizes. So I think a lot of our calculation stuff, and when you run some numbers even on the square footages of even 3-acre lots and that type of stuff, you get to get into some pretty big building coverages. One example I had there was like 13,000 square feet of building coverages. That seems out of line for our rural residential areas. I don't know if there's too many people doing that, but we're leaving our code up for that stuff since we have that stuff in there. You know, so the biggest issue is the stuff that we have in Section 8 there. Those things need to be revisited, and a lot of our setbacks and stuff. I went back through some old zoning books that we had from 2018 before some stuff was updated. And back then, we had 15-foot setbacks for rural residential lots for 2 acres, minimum lots. It's since been changed to 10 feet, which doesn't help you in a rural residential setting. You want things more spread out. You want more openness. You don't want people jamming stuff up on lot lines. I don't know why that ever got changed to 10 feet. I think it needs to be changed back to 15 or even increase it more as your lot sizes increases, 3 to 4 to 5 acre lots. That's way too close for a rural residential setting on that stuff. So that's where, a lot of my stuff came into play, and that's where it came up with some of the chart stuff that Franklin County has. It breaks it down more into square footage stuff, which is a lot more reasonable than trying to use a calculation on percentages for lot coverage. Because as you can see from this example, that lot coverage puts you into a lot of problems. And if you ever want to have any type of other meetings or whatever with public and stuff to sit down and go over something, it takes a lot of calculations sometimes like this. And it's, if we wanted to have a little more meeting sometime or whatever, people get together and have some boards and stuff drawn up on it, I'd be glad to do something like that. Thanks.
Anybody else? All right, seeing non-public comments now closed. Up to the table, anybody have anything they want to bring up before we start on chapter 14? Or we made it through 14? Or we're starting on 14? We started 15. Anybody?
And do you want to talk about his numbers first that he sent an email about? Just to finish up what we end up what we ended with.
What we ended with?
Remember that he looked up the numbers for the industrial zoning areas, like the lot coverages, the percentage coverage.
Some of the homework from the last.
Yeah, the homework. That's fine, if we want to go to homework
So we can
first.
just choose
Okay.
a number out of there. You maybe put it on the screen by any chance?
I'm not sure if he has those messages, unfortunately. Because we're all just emails I had sent. So the email should have had an attachment. One was a calculation for the PCD and the other was for the PID.
So,
You had that one up.
Oh, no, I'm not sure he has access to that, because it was just in my email, and I'm sorry, I didn't think to
What's
put it
our-
on the flash drive.
What's our date?
Today is the 10th.
No, what's the date on the email?
Oh, the email. That
Got
was
1,000,000
February
213.
13th,
213?
Yeah, SF ratio.
13,
cap-
3:37 PM.
I just thought you were gonna put it on the screen.
Yep.
All right.
Well, it doesn't per se, but my thing is just like, could we like figure out which number we want to take, so we wrap everything up that already exists, and just get a max number of coverage, like square footage per acre. So it seems like the highest one is the PCD. For PCD, it's about 9,028. Is that the highest? Or no, there's one higher.
The max in that data set was 9,883.
Can we just make it 10,000 round and call it a day?
Per acre.
Just a maximum on there.
I mean, yeah, if that's what the commission wants to do. I'm trying to jog my memory, because I think this discussion happened because, I'm trying to remember which section this was
It's because
relative to.
something was taken out on this section of the PCD.
Yes, that was it, you're right. I'm trying to remember where that was. Current one in front of me.
So
Somewhere
it was in
12,
12.
120303, I think.
General requirements, 5 acres in size.
It was a 1203.07 in the red line,
Rafik, could you pull up the red line copy?
120307? That's
the red line.
Article 12. I think it was 1203.07. Very, like, jumps straight to it. You got it. So that's that was the section that talks about the maximum square footage on a site, and I think where we talked about moving to a ratio, I think similar to what the PCF does.
Yes. And then you took all the numbers, so.
Yep, and then we-
could
that's how we-
figure
okay,
out
yep.
that we encompass everything that's already exists.
So that section is shown as reserved, so if we wanted to stick something in it, that'd be relatively easy, because we sort of bookmarked it.
I would say something that it defines as a maximum 10,000, what is it, square foot per acre, is that what it was?
So that would exceed the biggest one on there.
The biggest one was 9,883.
So we say 10,000.
Yeah, I mean, as long as it's higher than what we already have, I don't have concerns about that, because we're not creating a nonconformance. And I think you can see that a lot of them fall well below that,
Yeah.
so.
Just like, if someone does want to come up at some point with a higher thing, they can always do it, they just have to ask for a divergent, and then it's up to us, so.
Are we looking at the square foot per acre, or are we looking at total building square?
First one is right at the corner of.
I mean,
right across from GMR
beforehand,
Brothers.
I mean, I'd rather do the square foot per acre because all these things are.
That building's been there a long time, which is why it's,
Right.
it used to be like a foundry or something, I think, decades ago.
Anybody got any concerns there? Up here, please?
So you want me to take the language from PCF, borrow that language from PCF, put it in here, and make the number 10,000, is that what I'm hearing? For
Yes.
Article 12? Got it?
So the PCF one,
We'll just put that in 120307, because it's got a nice place
so
for it
it's
to live.
size and layout, it's got an A and a B. Our ratio in PCF is 7,500, but in PCD, then we'll have 10,000.
But this is what he did. Yeah.
PID.
PID max is 14,474,
15?
or we could 4,500, I mean, even 4,500, or 14,500, I mean, sorry, would even work.
That's fine with me too.
Because J Company, again, that's J Company, and they're also somewhat of an outlier. And a lot of that's driven by the fact that when J Company was originally approved, that site was like double the size it is now,
yeah,
because
yeah,
they
they
split it off, and that's what became Harris. So that's why the numbers there don't jive, so.
All right. So then the same thing on PID for
So that would be
130307.
13,007.
Same
Got it.
wording as PCF and put 14.5.
I mean, that's good that we've done that exercise, because we can justify the numbers.
So then, in relation to the public comment earlier about lot coverage for this section, for SR and RR districts, just noting the comment was 20% for building floor area ratio and 10% for RR floor area ratio. So our PCD districts are then going to be a maximum in line with the maximum in the RR, and the SR districts are twice the maximum that we're allowing a PCD district. Is that how I'm reading that?
Without looking closely at the, I haven't verified any of the math. So I can tell you that the percentages for the SRRR came about because there used to be actual just hard numbers in there. And actually, I'm relating a story of something that happened even before my time here. I was told it didn't work. Because we had too many variative housing types, and you had these huge estate lots, and people on huge estate lots tend to do a lot of things, and generally, the larger the lot, the further it's pushed back, the harder it is to see, you know, if they can make it work, make all the setback work. So it just created a ratio. Frankly, I think it works a lot better. I mean, do people have a hard time doing the math on the application? Yes, we do have to sometimes walk some people through it. But the bigger the project, usually they hire someone on to do it, and they've got an engineer or an architect, and they don't have issues crunching those numbers when they get that big. My concern with going backwards, or changing it to a straight square footage number, is we're gonna repeat the problem that we tried to fix years ago. And we will, and you'll increase probably cases to the BZA because of it. And the BZA is gonna say, why did you guys change this? This was not for the better. And also, if you go backwards, those, with those percentages, you're gonna create a lot of nonconformities, and you're also gonna increase the number of BZA cases, because they're gonna say, they're gonna have a valid argument that says, well, I'm already legally nonconforming now because your zoning commission took us backwards, and I built this under an old code with the presumption that I was gonna be able to build more, and now you're telling me I can't. So I guess I just can't be in favor of a situation where I'm not seeing that there's a problem. I'm not with it. It's working for staff, so it's one of those, I don't feel like I'm inclined to suggest fixing something that's not broken.
Yeah, and I don't think I'm suggesting we go to a flat number. Percentage lot coverage makes sense for most zoning districts, and that's how most zoning jurisdictions will handle that. Just noting that we're talking about 10% for a planned commercial district, and we're talking about 20% for the rural.
I think we're talking about rural residential versus SR, which is.
Correct.
Which, basically, I think the question is here, is someone gonna try to go through SR zoning to get a rural residential house on, like, a lot, has its laws? Basically, you can build a bigger house on an SR lot, as long as you have that big lot. And generally, SR is mostly gonna be used for getting multiple houses and do one long street, because that's kind of what it is for. It's one long street and a lot of houses on it, on both sides. But, I mean, there is a potential, indeed, that he says, like, yeah, what if you have a 1.8 acre lot and someone says it's SR, and you could have a humongous house on there with a lot of lesser setbacks? That was basically the question, I think. But I think honestly that's the reality of that happening is rather small, because first of all, SR is only allowed in zone 1, It's full right now, so I don't really see how that would happen.
And SR was designed to be a straight district alternative to the PRD, where you can have very large houses with setbacks that are only, 12 feet off the lot line. So I feel like, and if you look at the intent and purpose, the suburban residential districts, it's not supposed to be rural. It's suburban. It was designed to be a transitional straight zoning district from Westerville, the more dense development in Westerville, up to the more rural development of Genoa. It's sort of that stepping stone. So again, to me, I feel like it makes sense. I understand, when you start comparing numbers from district to district, maybe you could start saying, well, why this here and not this there? But I think you have to look at each one of the districts almost in a vacuum to a degree.
Yeah, I understand that, and I want to clarify my numbers earlier. I wasn't doing the math correctly. 10,000 maximum buildable area on an acre is closer to a 23% lot coverage, not a 10% like I alluded to. So planned commercial district would still have a higher threshold of buildable area per acre than an SR would, but they're similar.
Yeah.
And we just want to be aware of that when we think of development. Usually, commercial development tends to have more lot coverage than a suburban residential
Yes.
area, and it is twice the lot coverage from an RR, rural residential area. So I understand the comment, and I think it's just worth at least having a discussion to acknowledge that
I agree.
there is a discrepancy, and it's twice as much. Do we know what an average lot size, I know average is such a terrible term, and I don't want to make you dig into this, but like an average SR lot size in Genoa?
I feel like we did that
You did
math
it?
once upon a time.
We have it somewhere right now.
I'd have to go back into our notes but I'm pretty sure we did that number crunching once upon a time. We might have done it when we did the change to 30,000 square feet. I don't have it on me, but I'm sure it's
Sure.
somewhere on the computer back in my office.
Because we had to calculate what the density was.
Yeah. That was back on the density.
And I think that's how we came up with the 30,000 square foot number.
Yeah.
I mean, looking at the map, they're, I don't know, the average could be less than 2 acres, but in accordance with that ratio,
Definitely less than 2 acres.
yeah.
Probably less than 1 acre.
There are some big ones out there, though.
There are a
Might skew.
couple.
Few, yeah.
Now, the one we, off of Route 3, north of Big Walnut Road, is owned by the township, so nothing's gonna happen there.
Right.
And to Sebastian's point, most people buy those with the idea of further splitting them into smaller lots.
Sure. I think you want to go to McLean 14.
If you go type in like 14.1.01 without a jump here. There you go.
Got anything for 14? Madden 15?
I'm at 16.
I'm at 16.
Hey, we're good. No, we're good.
I got tabs too.
I don't, no, I got tabs, but
All
I'm
right,
just.
so nobody's got anything for 15? All right, 16.
Just so you know, I have been flipping through this looking for formatting errors, and I found a bunch of them. So if you see something misnumbered, mislettered, let me know, but
That's the
I'm,
first one in 16.
yep, that's what I found that one.
The
Yep.
A? Okay, there is no B, right? We're not doing a B?
Nope, those 2 through 7s will become B through G. I'll move that A over. Yep.
So those are all 1, 2s, 3s, or are there A, B, Cs?
That 1 should be A, and then 2 through 7 should become B, C, D, E, F, G.
Oh, they should just
Because
be A,
that
so
follows
you're-
the
Yeah, there we
the procedure we've set forth and how we go through the,
Anybody else in 16?
160311. Height capitalized.
good catch. Where was that one?
B, retaining wall shall be set back from adjacent lot lines. You're going up and down lowercase.
We need
Looking at the wrong one?
No, if it's capitalized, it's in the definitions.
Okay,
So we capitalize it in
Oh,
its
yeah.
definitions.
Yep.
thank you.
Yep.
There are occasions where it won't be capitalized because we're trying not to defer to the definition in the Article 4.
Gotcha. 1606.01,
601. Okay.
something we talked about 2 meetings ago with the one, then the number one in parentheses dwelling. Was that consistent throughout?
I need to go back and check that, but the one followed by the number in the parentheses is what we strive to do. So if you find an instance where you see that, even if you find it later and you want to just shoot me an email or call me or something, just let me know. Since that's not really substantive in terms of, the commission doesn't need to discuss it.
I mean, for me, it's more, it's 161801F, home occupation.
18,
Mm-hmm.
01F. Okay?
I mean, for me, why don't we permit, home occupation in an accessory building? Like, what if it's like, someone has like a small building and has his office or something like that?
That's a good question. I honestly can't tell you why it's not allowed. I think it's one of those that's how it's basically always been since I've been here. I'm checking the book right now to make sure that's the case.
Accessory building.
I know.
Home occupations, meaning people living in an accessory building.
That's
So
typically-
home occupation is basically, I have no home occupation, like, I have a commercial kitchen in my house, for
You're
instance.
reading home occupation as you're running a business from accessory building. I'm reading it as you're occupying an accessory structure as a home.
That's how I read it as well.
No, home occupation is a business running out of a home.
Yes.
So like if you're an
Okay.
architect or an accountant, you can convert it to detached
We need to
garage.
change something, because that's what it is.
Okay.
So,
The
I mean, we have these all over
Running
the
a
place.
business out of an accessory building.
Yeah, like you have an office or.
You had like a little
Detached garage.
detached
Studio.
garage that instead
Yeah.
of sitting in your house and
You capitalize, so what is our definitions?
you do cabinet work out of there or something.
We're on section 16.
I wouldn't mind making that permitted as a conditional use, to be honest.
I think,
Did
I
allow
would not
the-
be surprised that there are people using this actually right now.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure they're out there. Because they're just hard to really prove. Yeah, that's the word that's in the code right now. I can tell you, the BZA did hear a case on this a few years ago for one on South Old 3C closer to Mount Royal, and they did actually end up permitting it, I think. So if that's something we want to put in as a, I could look at whether or not the condition, because we allow certain home occupations only via conditional use. Actually, I wonder if that is the standard. Let me,
Because conditional use, you would still have to go to the BZA, right?
yes, the BZA would have to approve a conditional use. That's the checks and balances there. Let me check I'm gonna check the conditional use standards, because maybe it's already in there. And maybe we just need to clarify it. Let's see. I could look at permitting them as conditional use, and then they would just have to follow the conditional use standards and the drafted 1761.
So recently I've been looking at this in Berlin Township, and they have a similar exclusion in accessory structures that home offices are not allowed. They talk a lot about items such as H, like no sale of the premises for commodities. One of their stipulations is that for a home occupation to be, well, they never say it's allowed, but anything that happens in an accessory unit must be by the primary resident. And so I think it could be worth some redundancy on this if we talk about home occupations. If they're permitted, shall be permitted only with the use of the primary resident.
That's in there. Right now, you can have, the primary residence can work in there, plus there could be an additional person also working there. That's what it says right now.
Yeah, to meet the definition of home occupation, you have to be an occupation conducted by an owner or a residential tenant on the same premise as the principal place of
So
residence.
it's built into
So
the definition.
if you're renting it and you don't live on the property and run a business out of there, you don't even meet the definition of hog occupation, so
Gotcha.
you wouldn't be permitted.
Hey, Joe, correct me if I'm on tangent or thought on this, but isn't there something in here about, let's say you ran a concrete business or a landscape business, you have an office there for your guys to come in and out of in a residential area, and I seem to recall that's excluded.
Yeah, you can
And
have
that
like
would-
your
that-
little,
That could be somebody's home occupation. So are we gonna further classify this as more of an office type exposure as opposed to an industrial commercial exposure?
But it cannot be a commercial, like, you cannot have sales on the premise, that's specifically in there.
Okay.
So, I mean, you can have an office, someone comes there and, I mean, you're an architect or something, I mean, it's not really sales, it's not like you have a constant flow, it does start also in there, like, you cannot have a constant flow of extra people, like,
I generally tell people, the idea is I should be able to drive by that house and absent of maybe you've got a small sign on the building, I should not really be able to tell from the outside that you're conducting a business in that building.
it says you cannot have a sign.
Oh,
I agree.
you're
I
right.
don't think they should, I don't think they
Did
should
we
be
say
allowed to
that?
have sign.
Yeah, yep.
I would support the notion of having a home office in an accessory unit. I think we just want to be careful with the stipulations we put toward that, so we're not having things like signs and people coming up.
Yeah, I'll have to take a look at the sign thing, because signs, speech, technically, we have to always just be slightly careful that we're not impeding too much on that front. But because it's business speech and not, personal speech, there's sometimes a little bit more leeway on that, so. And there's a bunch of signs that you can do without a zoning permit necessarily that anyone could do that sometimes people can use to still convey their message. So I view it as sort of accessory dwellings. I think it's going to be the way we're going to see the world continue to go, just like we see more people moving parents back onto their property with work from home and stuff. I think it's going to be a more common practice. And with the right guardrails in place, I don't think it's necessarily objectionable.
Sebastian, that was one I was going to flag this time as well, so I think I like that notion.
All right, so for F, we want to modify or strike F to make it permitted via conditional use and have some guardrails around it, right?
Correct, modified.
I'll have to look at that and figure out what sort of the waterfall effects it has on some other sections, but we'll figure it out.
Go back a page real quick, 161602. P to 45. I've got it
Yes,
marked
yes,
in
yes.
blue and starred from one of the
Oh,
names.
yeah, that's right. You want 45?
Is that,
Yes, I got that.
yep.
Got it.
All right, anything else at 16?
Just a quick question on 1620.01.
Mm-hmm.
Item I, it came up in a meeting a couple of times ago about the cluster box.
Mm-hmm.
Is that set in stone by the federal government now, Postal Service?
The Postal Service has been pushing the cluster box for several years, for
Okay.
probably 10-plus years almost.
And that's where we got this from then, right?
Yeah, they sort of determine any area that was determined to be a rural mailing route, which they apparently have not updated that term since like the 50s, because they still consider an area like Genoa a rural mailing route, despite the fact we have 25,000 people, has to do the cluster boxes, which I get it. It's all from a logistics operation standpoint for them. But yeah, we did get some feedback. I mean, that individual, I believe, is trying to develop a subdivision, to be candid with you, so they were impacted by this, but they still have the right to say that, obviously.
That's, okay, I'm good.
Yeah, and I got the notion with the decorative waste basket or waste receptacle on it, the concern that gentleman brought up was it overflows and nobody empties it. But at least there's one to begin with. If somebody's letting it overflow and not emptying it, then somebody's not gonna pick up the trash and mail that's been discarded on the ground because there isn't a receptacle. So I'd rather have it thrown in a waste basket and somebody picks it up.
Right.
I'm fine keeping it, but
Agreed.
I want to keep it.
Yeah.
I just wanted to find out where we got it from. It makes sense, so that's good.
anything else there? 17. Who's got the first one?
Something here.
There's gotta be something. We've spent a lot of time on 17, so.
We did the
especially
last go-around.
The
yeah,
last,
I recall that.
especially in the red line. Good?
Bunch
I
of
have,
formatting
I have
errors
one,
in this
like,
one.
it's an open kind of question, because I mean, we don't really define any landscape requirements for any of these things, and I feel like an amusement park, you know, we don't say anything like it needs to be. I know the zoning will be, I don't know, PCF or PCI probably, a PID or
Yeah,
something.
very few
where-
districts that would be in.
Yeah.
It says that in general requirements that adequate landscaping and screening should be provided.
I know, but what does that mean? I mean.
Well,
that-
any
that- that
development
means-
in one
I
of
don't
those
know.
plan districts is gonna fall under Article 20. So all the landscaping requirements are 20. So if there's something you wanna do in addition to 20, I mean,
But-
that's
but
fine,
is-
but
Is there a percentage in 20?
percentage of what?
Like a percentage of planting? I mean, could it all be hard surface or like?
Well,
what-
they would still have to abide by all the open space buffers, the
Right.
setbacks of
Well,
all
yeah,
that plan district.
obviously, yeah, but.
So, I mean, if there's something you wanna do in addition to what those requirements are, I'm all for it, but. I mean, candidly, I'm not terribly concerned about getting an amusement park or amusement
Well,
resort, but.
I'm assuming too. I mean, there might be other uses in here.
Yeah,
that
more
might
likely,
Be
yeah.
more concerning to that regard.
And some of these will stack too, you gotta remember. So
Yeah.
if you're like an amusement park and you've got, chances are they've got other operations that trigger other standards in here with like loading bays and stuff for the back of the house stuff. All of that gets triggered and all those requirements for those uses will get triggered too.
I mean, it's fine. I mean, I think it will probably work itself out. in these-
So you gotta have something else, Sebastian.
No, this is the same.
Oh.
I'm looking where the next one is. I have 171608.
And like I said, I found a whole bunch of numbering and lettering things all throughout here that I'm gonna fix.
That's about the car wash.
Car wash.
For me, like, I would still also say that the entrance drive also needs to have a minimum length, because, I mean, we, like, if you go to, like, Meyer parking lot and it's summertime, I mean, there's just a queue of cars going into that thing, and at some point, it might impede into the traffic, that's just my concern.
So you want sort of queuing like we do for drive-throughs?
Something, I mean, here it already says it's at least 40 feet in the exit lane, but I don't see why we wouldn't have it at the entrance lane then, too.
Well, so 171609A somewhat touches on upon it under the parking, because it says six
Yeah,
waiting
six waiting,
spaces
yeah.
and 2 storage spaces for each car wash device or stall, plus the 10 parking spaces.
Yeah, but that's not really queuing, right? That could be just like if it's like stalls, like the one behind Kroger or something.
What you're saying?
That's how I read it. But.
You want to mimic that, the 40 feet for both entrance and exit? Is that sort of what I'm hearing?
Yeah, but 40 feet's only 2 cars.
Oh, for the stacking.
Yeah, but then we need more. But I mean,
Well,
I'm just saying, like,
yeah.
if you see the summer, it just sometimes ridiculous on this.
Do you want me to look to see if it makes sense? So the drive-through establishment standards have a stacking
Yeah.
requirement. Do you want to see if it makes sense for me to pull that language and put some of it in there?
What was that, 6 then?
That's just what I was
Six.
looking to flip over to.
Spaces and 2 storage.
Drive-through, it's.
5 reservoir
40,
stacking
1742.
spaces per drive-through lane. So each drive-through lane has to have room for basically 5 cars after the one that's at the window.
Fine for me.
I know what you're talking about. We tried to watch the Equinox today at Meyer, and
That one. is
Rafik
only
couldn't do it.
That one would only be considered one drive-through, one lane, then it's less, so you wouldn't be putting more. So like the one in front of Meyer, that'd be considered one,
It's one lane, yeah.
it's one,
Well, it's only one entrance in that whole
one
machine.
entrance and it's one thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they've got 3 that are cars long.
What do you mean 3 entrances?
They have 3 lanes going into that thing.
Oh, they have
that are
3
at least-
lanes?
That are at least 15
Oh, right.
cars long.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying, well, he only says per window, so that would be only one.
Yeah, so we would be allowing less if you wanted, unless we're gonna put some other stacking.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, I don't want to,
Like, that's on a,
Yeah,
that's
I
on a
mean,
drive-through one versus a bay one, then you're
Yeah, no,
talking
no, no,
about a
you're
totally
right.
different size.
I mean, I just want a minimum in there, that's mostly it, but,
I mean, we could double the drive-through establishment one. because
I mean, if it's 12,
they see more traffic than a drive-through bank does on average, right? I would think.
What I'm saying is they have more now.
Yeah, so they might of their own accord even go over it, but at least to his point, we would have something, so you don't get some smaller one trying to just squeeze in somewhere.
But when you look at the three right there on the corners, you've got Turkey Hill, Moo Moo, and then the touchless behind Kroger. If you do the Turkey Hill one, you only have room for maybe 3 cars before you're interfering with the gas pumps.
Well, they have, but their lane, when we went through that, was against the building.
Okay.
So their drive-through goes all the way to the exit against the building.
Okay.
So it's like 10, 12 cars. When they, 'cause
Which,
they-
to your
when
point,
they-
that was sort of the number you just threw out.
When they relayed it, when they relayed that out, when we just saw them
Yep.
do the signage stuff. So that was part of their designation as the entrance to that one. The one by, across from Boyd's, there's the bays, but they have the 3 automatic ones, and that's way longer than that. Because it wraps all the way around, and then the one in front of Meyer is significant because it's 3 lanes.
Should we want to just do 12?
Minimum of 12.
Minimum of 12, knowing that they're probably going to build larger than that anyway.
Yeah, I hesitate to make more pavement. You know, I get it that sometimes it gets a little overflown. I haven't seen it where it's spilled out into the Meyer and people can kind of pull around. It is a parking lot. It's not like they're spilling out onto Polaris or Maxtown Road. And so, you know, while we have had the Texas dust storm and we've had all this need to wash the cars, 90% of the time, you know, there's not anybody queued up or whatever, some percentage of time.
you're talking about a specific case. It could be just in this street, and then the traffic, it blocks, interferes in traffic. That's the question that we need to ask this
And put it,
ourselves. I
put
mean,
like a
I
main
share,
street.
I'm not concerned either, but.
Well, the perfect example for you then is the take 5 over on Polaris, where it goes all the way out to the street and it gets to the right out Polaris because it's not long enough.
Could we do something like a traffic analysis or a use analysis report must be shown to indicate that it won't, rather than just mandating asphalt to mandate asphalt?
I mean,
You know.
there's gonna be asphalt there anyhow. I mean,
So do we need, so then we're gonna go back to what's the street, so arterial, we're gonna call it, it won't interfere with any traffic on
I like that.
the street.
how could we?
It's hard to assure that during the design because it's all about, you just don't know. Without a hard set number and saying you got to do this, okay, 12 is 12, that's easy to count and administer. Short of that, you know, a needs analysis could make sense of, but then you're sort of questioning, okay, well, who did the study and what's their interest? And I mean, I would think most of the big car washes know all those answers, or at least have in-house documentation of what their need is, but one car wash may say it's X and another may say it's Y, and then you're not sort of being consistent. I mean, I'm all for trying to make these very well designed because I don't want to, I have nothing personal against car washes. I use it all the time, obviously, but they have proliferated southern Delaware County quite a bit, it seems recently, and I'm not really terribly interested to see just us become a community of car washes. Strategically based, you know, fine. But if we're gonna get one, at least have it be well designed.
So you're suggesting an actual number, or do you want to put wording on it that says?
I prefer having like a minimum like stacking number. I think that's just the best way to go about it. I mean, we can still mention it that you should still, I would still put it in there that you should still make sure that you don't impede in traffic. I mean, that probably should still be in there, but.
Oh, yeah, I would definitely, if it's not in there already, I'd make a provision that that stacking lane couldn't block like a parking space. Nothing makes me angrier than when I'm at like a drive-through restaurant and their drive-through stacking lane, and you can't back it, like Wendy's here has that. Nothing against Wendy's, we allowed it, but, If you park against the building and there's a long Wendy's line, you're not getting out, so.
You grab some language that would be reasonable.
Yeah,
for the
I'll look at doing like about 12, I feel
17,
like is
16,
the.
08, yeah.
I might revise, I'll look at 171609A to see how it marries up with that standard to make sure it's just not overkill.
Yeah, and, or could we cross-reference it with because we're just kind of throwing a number out there, 2Xing our drive-through, maybe is there like Orange Township or?
Yeah, I'll
entities that
do
are
some, I'll do some research, sometimes even Google research, like you can go on like, there's all sorts of associations and stuff, right? There's gotta be a car wash association that probably has like some general standard that they go by that we can maybe look at. and see if it works. They probably want all the more spaces, because that's more people they can queue up and process, so.
Well, I mean, there's a reason that Chick-fil-A just built a brand new place
I think I have one more thing maybe.
on the west side of 71, because you couldn't queue around the one at Senkis. And
There's one on both sides of
now
the
they're going to add a
71.
second one on our side, so.
Yep.
They haven't put the date on that yet, though. Open date.
Oh, the one on the east side?
East side, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't heard that yet either.
Any more 17s? You're done? Okay.
With 17.
18 it is, signs. No signs, no tabs. Sebastian? 19. Parking.
Nineteen oh 6.01, how did we come up with 7 days?
1906.
01.
01.
I believe the answer is that's how it's always been, to be completely candid. I'll double check, but 7 days tends to be the standard throughout the document when it comes to keeping vehicles and stuff on your property that otherwise shouldn't be there.
Okay. That was just a question.
I think it just seemed like a reasonable, we have to have something that we can measure and go by. And I think a week seemed reasonable to keep it on there until you can find a place to put it. I know a lot of the HOAs are a lot more strict than that.
1904.03 mixed-use buildings. That we have a lot.
Yep.
Mixed-use buildings, centers, and live-work dwellings should be required to provide the minimum number of parking spaces for both their non-residential and residential uses, with the former non-resident being subject to the permitted parking maximums set forth therein. So this implies that, let's say there's a commercial use that requires 20 spots and a residential use that requires 20 spots, the minimum provided must be 40 or greater. Oftentimes there's opportunities for, during the daytime, the residences are gone at work and then the commercial is being used at that time. Do we have any multiplier, or does that require a variance to get that approval?
Yeah, I think it'd be a variance or a divergence, and I think like a parking needs analysis, sort of like what we were talking akin to the car wash thing, would be an excellent justification, because those would be so specific. I think that needs analysis would work. I think we've hesitated I think we're open-minded about the shared parking arrangements, but I think we've hesitated to actually put any stipulations in there because it's just hard to predict the situation.
Do we want to put any language in there that, I guess, that would be redundant. I withdraw that statement.
I remember we talked about a shared parking or a parking study at one point during the prior review. I can't remember, I'd have to jog my memory on where we came down on it. But
I think it was about that for a PRD, that they could provide a study and then they could get less parking spots or something like that, but we scratched that out. It was further on, actually.
we have, we actually covered in 190409. Shared and/or reciprocal parking agreements, corresponding access easements may be accepted in lieu of required on-site parking spaces without the need for a variance or divergence for conditional use in planned developments. Documentation of such an agreement shall be provided to the township prior to the granting of a legal approval.
Part of that was the daycare center at Gianmarco's.
Yep.
When we said that they could go. I remember that one well.
Yeah.
Yes. So there was an agreement, that was different.
Yep. And I know there's other business, I know of at least one other business that has a shared parking agreement with another business in the community. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, if we, again, to Mr. Tyson's point, if we can get less asphalt, I'm all for that.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else parking? 20. Landscaping.
General thing that also applies to a few things. I mean, like the F part of 2003, 01.
Mm-hmm.
The F part, basically, that we're saying that we can choose a wall or a fence instead of planting. Like, I'm just, like, for me, like, I'm always gonna choose planting over a wall. I'm not saying that there couldn't be a wall. I'm just saying maybe we should just limit how much wall.
Well, we do, it's 5.5 feet in height.
High, but
I think
not
he's
in
talking about
length.
the linear-
You could basically put a whole wall around the whole premise then, instead of doing planting right now. That's kind of the problem that I could foresee that someone might do that instead of doing planting.
So what you're asking for is a percentage of the perimeter?
I mean, I can imagine that someone maybe wants to do part of a wall in front of the frontage, maybe the side even, depending what's next to you. But I mean, doing the whole thing, a wall, like, I mean, because there's multiple sections where this comes back. Yeah, I would just opt for a percentage, like 20%. I don't know, I mean, I'm pulling a number here out of thin air, but.
I would be an advocate if we could consider limiting the use of concrete walls in particular districts. So it makes sense in a planned industrial district, like the area where the campfire is now, and there's all those, there's junkyards and dangerous things you don't want kids sneaking through some landscape to get to.
Yeah.
So I could see, you know, maybe it's only allowed in a planned industrial district, and concrete masonry walls are not allowed in other zone.
We could make that clarification in there, doing by district type or maybe residential, non-residential, or however you want to split it up, make those subpoints under items 1. I think as long as you do it by district. I think I'd prefer that route as opposed to a straight percentage, because there's just so many variations in site types and those natures of those uses. I think it'd be sort of a little messy to just try to set a number. But I could see, yeah, if you've got a high-profile commercial district, you might not want to see a whole bunch of gray, CMU. Maybe it's in the back surrounding the dumpster, that's one thing, but if, you don't want to allow a long front along the parking lot or something.
Be fair, it's a masonry. I mean, is that CMU? Would that be CMU or would that be?
Well, it'd be concrete masonry, I think that's what
Would
CMU
that be
stands for,
allowed?
so. That would qualify as masonry. Now, we could say.
I know. Now I'm like, should we even, I mean, that's gonna be looking.
Well, we could add the
horrible
word
if we allow that.
decorative and clarify that we don't consider CMU decorative, but there are situations where the CMU does make sense when they're
I
not
mean, they
highly
make-
visible.
They make decorative ones, like the ones that look like stone.
Yeah, split face block.
Yeah, if you've got some architectural suggestions for the wording there, or if you want to break it down by district, I don't think that's unreasonable. I mean, we have, right now, basically, the code just says a solid masonry wall, so it's just replicating what's in the code now. It doesn't mean we can't improve it, though.
I mean, can we, instead of, like, I understand that you want to do a wall, but can we still not ask for planting in front of this wall if it's like on a, like, I understand it if it's in between properties, but if it's like visible frontage.
I mean, if you want to limit where the masonry wall, the situations in which you can use a masonry wall, that might be,
I mean, I have not even a problem with it being masonry wall. I just have a problem with taking away all the landscape and saying, "Hup, we're putting a wall now, and then that's it."
Yeah.
Like, I mean, some walls can look nice. I mean, there are a few in the township and they look okay. but-
I mean, there's multiple layers of landscaping you have to do here. There's
Yeah, no, I know.
the no pave, and then there's the site perimeter, and non-residential, and the landscape berm, and the off-street perimeter. To your point, I mean, we could basically, I could look at trying to limit, so you basically don't have wall on top of wall on top of wall to meet one of those. You can only do it once, and again, maybe it can only be used in certain conditions.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's warranted to take a look at that. I don't have a solution right now for you, but I probably could noodle on that if you want me to.
I think that would be good.
Yeah.
So you want to put it in each district, or do you want to put it just in 20 and reference it?
I'd probably put it in 20 and break it down by districts in 20, because
Right.
I'd like to warehouse it all in one central area. Ideally, I wouldn't have each district listed. Ideally, we were gonna be able to at least parse it out between non-res and res or something, and then maybe saying it's only allowable in these scenarios. But I'll flag that because I think it appears at least 3 times in that section. So is the concern primarily the masonry wall?
It's not per se that I'm against the wall. My
just don't wanna
concern is,
lose the
like,
trees.
I want to have still landscaping possibilities, that someone is not gonna say, oh, no, I'm just gonna do a wall and no landscaping. That's
Okay.
what I don't want.
Yeah, I think the market probably itself limits the amount of concrete masonry, because like, it's just so much more expensive to build a masonry wall than it is to put some of these fences up. I've been looking all around the township right now, and I'm really not seeing much, except that there's that permanent wall structure behind Campfire that we talked about during that one. So I agree with Sebastian. I think if you're going to use a wall, these landscape requirements apply. And they can put up a mason wall if they want, or they can put in a decorative fence, they can put in,
Well, we could still say you can do the masonry wall, but you still have to provide us X amount of trees or something. with it.
Right.
So you're not, it's got to be fewer amount of trees than you would otherwise be required to do under the plantings.
Right.
Otherwise, no one's ever going to pick to do it. They'd rather just put
But
the
this is
trees
also
in.
just
but-
the no pave setback buffer, not necessarily the site perimeter.
I missed that.
That'll be in the section of no pave. with
Yeah,
that.
but it also shows up in the site perimeter and the landscape berm. No, we can take a look at,
Anybody really wanting shielding, I mean, you're limited to 5.5 feet, that's not enough, they're gonna want plantings. So, by the way, 2003.02, you got the tab on one.
yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I'll look at reworking that a little bit for you, and we can bring it back and discuss it. I think that's worth taking a look at.
So that'll apply to 01, 02,
Yeah, imagine whatever we do for
and
01
04.
and 02, we would do for 04.
For that's it, those 3 sections.
Okay, so I'm gonna write rework to require some landscaping, possibly district or context, and/or context specific.
So even if it wouldn't be completely in lieu of, it would still allow for a barrier. Let's say it's 120 feet long, and they put a 120-foot wall up, but they still have to have plantings of a certain percentage compared to what the other part is.
That's what I would suggest.
Yeah, I think that
I don't
makes
think we
sense.
want to limit the wall. If somebody wants to spend the money.
No,
on
we're
the
just
wall,
saying,
but we just need
If you do the wall, you're still gonna have to give us some trees or something
Yes.
along with it.
Okay, all right, I'm good with
Are
it.
you concerned about do you want the same approach to the fence?
See, they,
Would you want some trees to go with like a fence? A fence are usually obviously a little softer in look, but,
I mean, I feel like, yeah, there definitely needs to be landscaping with fences too.
okay,
I don't think we should distinguish between those.
got it.
Man-made structure.
And then I think the berm design standards,
The which one?
we referenced nothing,
Berm?
I'll figure it out.
04?
Yeah, I'll figure it out.
Okay. All right. More in landscape? No? Lighting? We got all these different uses. Parking lot, building mounted, canopies, but we don't have anything on entrance that distinguishes entrances.
Entrances, like, what are you thinking? Can you give me an example?
The Grove entrance.
On the,
Pillars, lights on top. They're broadcast lights. We have dictated everywhere else that it has to be downward facing lights, but here we have two big lights sitting on top of pillars that broadcast in front of people's yards across the street. So, do we need to make another one called entrance lighting, or do we want to group it into something else?
no, we could look at adding that. I'd be inclined to allow them, but I think we ought to probably have a foot candle, maybe sort of treat them like street lights, where we say, okay, the bulb's got to be recessed a certain way, you can only, your foot candle spread can't be a certain, spread, so we can look at that. And I think that's probably how I would view them as
Does that not
streetlights.
fall under our commercial lighting?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. But there aren't really much restrictions on that.
There's not enough. Honestly, I think we ought to have downward everywhere, upward and downward, and that's it. Broadcast out ones. We get enough complaints about it. By the way, that one at the vet clinic has never been fixed.
Yeah, I know, we reached out to them a while ago, and they were looking into it, and then they never did, so.
When you're driving down Big Walnut Road, there's this big
Pete,
light
that's a
that
good one
just
to add to your list.
at you.
Remind me to talk to you about that one tomorrow.
The one at Medallion too. Let's just go over there and address it at the entrance to Medallion. Every now and then it shines right down
Which entrance?
the Sunbury Road.
One of the wall lights?
It's out towards the road. It's supposed to be shining like in the center island between in the median.
Oh, if it's in the right of way, I'm not sure I'd have control over that one.
Yeah, I think it's, I'll let you look into it, Joe, but I think 2102.04 makes sense for that to be the section. Could be architectural light intended to highlight architectural features, including entrances and.
So you
yeah.
maybe just mention the entrance lighting, the pier light, brick pier lighting, does that maybe just reference it there?
In that section, and then, because that one says it shall not allow the source of light to be directly viewed from any lot line, standard line of sight. But I think even more specific restrictions on that would make sense, like, to be very direct about it, because that's just such a gray area. Well, you can't really see it from this lot. I like it, let's do it.
I might also look to see, even though it's not signage lighting, a lot of times we see that lighting and associated with entrance features installed as part of signage.
Yes.
So I may make, also reference it in Article 18, at least point people to Article 21
Okay.
to understand those.
Anybody else on lighting? Oh, I didn't bring that up before, but because we spent some time on lighting before. Yeah. All right, 22, utilities.
I got one. 220101.
22.
First sentence, it says regulations for utilities, but utilities isn't capitalized, and I think it should be.
Oh, yeah, that's a defined term, isn't it?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Anybody else?
You know, the other item I have for utilities is, we've got wind farms, we've got solar farms, but in order to have wind farms and solar farms, you might need battery storage. So you produce the electricity, you store it in a battery, and then when you need it, it goes out to the facilities. I didn't see it in here, maybe I overlooked it. Is battery storage part of any of these utility systems?
I'd have to look into that. I'd also have to look to see if that falls under something we can control, because these things, wind and solar are, the revised code dictates what we can and can't control on those items. Now, it might be silent on battery storage, which if it is, then I think we probably could do it, but I'll look into it. So do you have any recommendations? If
Location,
Yeah,
spacing, or
location,
size, or
yeah.
what?
Location, size?
you have any industry standards that you know of that,
I can look for them, not off the top of my head.
okay, that'd be
But
helpful, because otherwise.
It'd be like
I'm
a
gonna-
generator, putting a generator in your neighborhood.
It's not admittedly my probably area of expertise, so.
I believe it's in ORC pretty significantly with their energy storage.
Yeah, it'd be energy storage.
I mean, it's possible that PUCO or the power siting, some of these other groups that get involved with these things might
It
have
would be
those.
part of Power Sighting Board and PUCO, for sure.
Yeah, but if you find something, and I think we can do it, then, I mean, I'm happy to put it in, because that sounds like a safety issue.
All right. 23? Ag?
I will report, the state is looking at completely, or further restricting our ability to control agriculture, so keep an eye on that. I just saw that today.
24, temp use structure. No? No one?
A lot of that's just relocated language from,
One to death, 3 years, so. Nonconformities. 25. Good. All right. 26. That's pretty straightforward. Good. 27.
I think 27, we hammered pretty good when we went through it
Yes, we did.
the last go-around with the plan expirations.
All right. Appendix?
I usually don't consider the appendix a codified, I mean, I guess if you see something wrong with it,
Well,
let
it's
me
the
know,
history,
but.
so. All right, so that takes us to. Do you want to talk about the short-term rental emails?
I can. So basically, similar to the side comment I just had about ag, the state is also looking at completely removing our ability to control short-term rentals. It's still very early in the process. I think they're actually accepting testimony in committee for and against tomorrow. This week, it might even possibly as early as tomorrow. I did speak to the OTA government relations individual about it. Obviously, I have concerns. Townships in general have concerns. I think the OTA is likely to oppose it. It's currently worded because obviously we do not want to see our authority weakened at all. If we do have to play ball and come to some sort of at least agreement, compromise, I do think I threw out some ideas of what those compromises potentially could be to the OTA rep. We'll see if any of them make it in to the bill. So I've reached out to the prosecutor's office to say, okay, well, since that seems to be up in the air, how do you recommend we handle it? In the meantime, I've yet to get that answer. Mark Fowler, who, actually, I'll note, we will not be probably seeing Mr. Fowler much longer. He actually got appointed to a judge vacancy. So I believe.
Congratulations, Mr. Fowler.
Yeah, I believe he told me his last day is around, I want to say it's around the 20th of this month.
Wow.
I'm still waiting I think I know who we're going to be assigned, but I don't think it's been officially announced or stated yet, so I don't want to say and have it change. But we'll get someone,
Okay.
obviously. So yeah, we'll miss Mark. He's worked with us for a long time and given us a lot of good advice, but happy to see him get that opportunity, obviously.
That's awesome.
But I did talk to Mark today about it, and he said he imagines the prosecutor's office in general will come up with guidance for all communities, because we will very likely not be the only community asking that very question. So we're sort of wait and see mode on that. I do have a punch list of, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, did you want me to?
Yes.
Okay.
Keep going.
I didn't want to talk more if you didn't want me
Had
to.
a lot
So,
of things, we've had a lot of things on the list. that are
there's
on the
been a
punch
lot of
list.
things that have popped up since we started this process. I've been keeping a punch list of things we're gonna have to circle back to. I need to find it here. I have it printed somewhere. So the state is also, as you know, looking at whether or not they're gonna roll back some of the rules regarding marijuana. I've also seen a bill that says they may also, if a community hasn't already issued a moratorium, remove a community's ability to do that, possibly with those who've already done it being grandfathered in. How that impact, and those are done outside of zoning. How that impacts zoning is, one of my notes is, do we need to at least put the prohibition against marijuana dispensaries into the resolution? Because people are likely, when they want to know if it's allowed, aren't going to know it's a non-zoning item. They're likely going to go to this document. So just like we did for cultivators and processors, I may add that use and just put a note that this item has been prohibited pursuant to resolution, blah, blah, blah. I might have to look at the address numbers in Article 18, since not all houses have mailboxes, again, due to the cluster box issue. Also in Article 18, I emailed you about sort of the signage area in the residential districts. I'm gonna have to look at how we're gonna tweak some of that language. I started drafting an idea today, but I wanna flesh it out, and I'll probably meet with the chairman to sort of show him what I think makes sense, and then once he and I take a look at it and think we're on the right page, I'll bring it back in front of the entire commission, if that's all right. Also in Article 18, I realized we have the bonuses, but the bonuses apply to the number of signs you can get. And it's very hard to get to that next higher number, because most people are gonna fall under 50% on those bonuses, because they're not gonna hit all of them. So might have to look at a way of how we round those numbers, or, actually, no, I'm sorry, let me reverse that. I'm not so concerned about the rounding. I wanted to make sure the rounding only applies to the number of signs you're getting. So I don't want that rounding theory to apply to, like, the square footage. You get 55% bonus applied to that square footage. I don't want you to be able to round that up to the nearest high number. If you're at 23.76, you only get 23.76. You don't get to go up to 24, if that makes sense.
Yes.
But if you're at 1.55 for the number of freestanding signs, you ought to be able to round up to 2, because obviously you're not going to be able to put in half a sign. So, based on it, if you recall, Stocka was here a couple meetings ago. I had proposed we delete a provision regarding notifying ODOT for some of these rezonings. He did find that it still does live in the statute somewhere that we're supposed to do that. It's not in 519 though, which is why it got missed. So I'm probably gonna have to undelete that, and I'll probably cite that ORC section so we know in the future where A, it came from, and B, to look back at it to see if it ever gets deleted so we can take it out, because ODOT never responds when we send them that stuff. Also what Tony said, I'll have to look at the conditional use standards. Anything regarding building materials, we're gonna have to soften or revise, because the ORC apparently says we can't do that. So I'll look back at that, and I'll flag the sections and let you know what I think we're gonna need to do there. And then also the note, I already talked about the vacation rental. We use the term vacation rental, the revised code uses a short-term rental, so we're gonna have to look at that. Sorry, I got a whole bunch of notes here. I wanna make sure I hit everything.
You also sent me something about landscaping wording that we wanted to do.
Oh, yes. So,
1211.
you guys had flagged 903.11 the last time, so I did send you an email back on the 6th with what is the existing language that's in the red text. And then I have, in the blue text, is suggested language for the plan districts, and then in the green text is the suggested language for the straight districts, it's Articles 6 and 8 there. So I don't know if you want to talk about this evening or just take some time to look it over as part of some of the rest of this we're doing. Chairman Leffar and I already had a discussion about it. I think, I don't want to mischaracterize our conversation, but I believe we were on the same page with it.
You guys have a chance to,
I was fine with it.
I'm good.
Okay, so we want to go ahead and just,
Yes.
as drafted?
As drafted. No. Good.
And then obviously you've got some public comment I think you're going to continue to probably
Yep.
think over from tonight and previous meetings, and let me know what, if anything, you want to do there.
All right, so our homework up here is to go back through what we've got and what we received from comments, and whether or not we want to revisit any of the items. Joe's given us updates for what we've got. We just did the landscape piece. So next meeting, we'll come back, we'll see what we've got from the punch list that he's got. Does anybody have anything else that we want to identify at this moment?
This one, no.
So my goal now is to probably, now that we've gotten through the whole document, is just incorporate the edits that we know are plain, obvious, just fix this, fix that, fix that. And I'll try to work on some of those, hey, I'm gonna think about this, I'll try to develop some language there. And I'll try to get to you as much as I've gotten done prior to the next meeting. I'll try to get as much as I can done. I mean, ideally, I'm gonna shoot to get it all done. But I just never know when I pick up the phone on any given day, how it's gonna blow my day up. So I think we're all familiar with that. So I'll do the absolute best I can to get it as much done as I can. And then,
All right, anything else specific to the ZR? All right. And that means we will close this one at 8:16 PM. Well, that was just the zoning hearing, that piece. So other, we got a.
oh, do you need to make a continuance motion?
Oh, sorry, we gotta make it. Sorry. Your ball, it's your ball game.
I will do it, but when is the next one?
Oh, next meeting? Oh, we gotta do.
April 14th.
14th. Okay.
7 o'clock.
Do I just read it?
Just that continuous motion and fill in the blanks if you want.
I continue to move, I move to continue the public hearing for the subject zoning text amendment, date November 12th, 2024, zoning case number 2024-05 until April 14th at 7 PM in the Township Hall.
A second.
Discussion. Roll.
Bernert? Mr. James? Mr. Teichman?
Aye.
Mr. Wester?
Aye.
Mr. Leff?
Yes. Motion passes. Time is now 8:17. By the way, the 14th meeting, I will not be here.
Okay. Thank you for letting me know.
So,
Okay, spring concert.
Knowing that, do you want to delay reorg a month? Because the April meeting, so for those of you who are new to this party,
yeah.
That's true.
April is usually the month we reorganize, not that the board appointments are done, so you elect or re-elect the chairman, well, you're gonna need a new vice chairman, because Mr. Welch was the vice chair, so if you want to postpone it a month, that's totally your prerogative to do so.
I mean, I don't know who else is going to lead the meeting if we don't have a vice and an actual.
You do have a
chairman.
provision in the rules of procedure, so
There is a provision in there.
I will have to look at it. It might be you, Mr. Bernier. I'm not sure.
It is the next longest term serving
I
person.
think it is usually the most senior member who's not an elected position, so.
For me, it's the same. I mean, if we want to postpone it.
That's fine.
Or, well, and the alternative, well,
Or
you
move
just closed the hearing. Alternative, I don't have any applications for next month right now. So, just
Postpone the meeting is what you're saying.
well, yeah, we'd have to probably make another motion to reopen that hearing real quick
Okay, I
and
see what you're saying. Continuous
and
motion is not
revise
correct.
your motion to the continuance if you want to. Actually, I won't be here in May, though, so you might be better served to just go to April and see where we get.
Well, I mean, we've got some updates that you've got to do anyway, so we probably ought to do. It's not like we're not gonna pass the thing in the next meeting. No, we're not. So, but if we can review it and you have language that we can actually.
Correct.
can go
I mean, we
through.
could check back in and see how things are going, yeah.
So let's just keep it
Okay, that's fine with me. Might be a short meeting, we'll see.
fine.
So we are keeping an April 14 meeting?
Just keep it on the
Probably
14th.
best and cleanest to do that.
Yeah, just keep it on the 14th, that's fine.
You could, if you don't want to talk about that evening, you can open the hearing, say we're not going to talk about that evening, motion to continue and continue into a different meeting. so.
Sure.
You can make that decision that evening.
We'll figure it out. Okay. All right. next items, we want to talk about the appointments?
Yes. So as I believe you probably all got my communication, and as Mr. Leff noted, Mr. Welch will not be returning. Mr. Wester is also in his last meeting this evening. He will not be returning to us either. He's decided he's had his fun. Going to move on, so thank you, Mr. Wester.
Yeah, appreciate it.
for your
Thank you.
service.
All right, thank you very much.
So the newly appointed regular member, Marcy Van Howe, will be seated in April. The position previously held by Mr. Welch. She was unable to attend this meeting, but she's either watching live or is going to be watching after the fact because I've already met with her or talked with her. And then Mr. David Adler is here in the audience. He will be the new alternate, taking Mr. Wester's position. So, and Mr. Adler and I have already had a meeting, and I'm sure he's reviewed the 10,000 pages of documents I sent to him. So, good to hear. So we're excited to have those members on board, and we'll see them next month.
And we'll plan on doing the reorg May then.
Yeah, and you can, I won't be here, but that's fine. I mean, it's your reorg, not mine, so.
Okay. So this meeting is April 14th, 2025. We've got a site walk scheduled for the 23rd, if there's a request before March 17th, which is in 7 days.
Yeah, I'm not sensing we're going to, but I'll let you know.
Anybody have anything else to bring up, discuss?
Sir.
All right, Ryan, thanks again.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your time.
Appreciate y'all.
Thank you for spending your evenings with us once a month.
Thank you.
Same thing with Mr. Welch again.
Learned a
Thank
lot.
you.
It's quite a process that the township goes through. Great to be part of it.
All right, do I have a motion?
For adjournment,
Motion for adjournment, anybody?
I motion to adjourn the meeting today at 8:20.
I second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, meeting adjourned, 8:22 PM.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.